Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9-to-5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.
Hey everyone, I am Yvette Lloyd, host of Life Her Podcast. I am joined with an amazing Dr. Kevin, and he is a CEO, Magna Leadership Solutions and Management and Leadership expert, and an executive positive intelligence coach, and a professor at 5 universities. Imagine that, guys. So he has decades of experience developing leadership, and also he helps businesses build high performing teams and guiding professionals in the transition form of corporate careers and entrepreneurship. With 18 years of Intel Corporation, where he led leadership development programs, and over 15 years of entrepreneur and executive coach. He brings the wealth and the knowledge on the creating engaging teams, transitioning from manager to leader, and the developing of strong personal brand. He is also the author of The Leader of Oz, a book that explores the practical leadership strategies. Today, we are diving in on what it truly takes to lead and inspire and make impact. Whether you're in corporate, running your own business, or looking to level up your career, this is the podcast show for you. And hello, Dr. Kevin, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Yvette. Thank you so much for sharing me with your audience today.
Thank you for being on my show. I really appreciate you and the things that you're going to talk about, because it is needed.
There's, I think, lots of things to talk about, and my leadership journey has been an interesting one. And I think the biggest thing I can say is I've been really blessed with the opportunity to be able to teach so many leaders and give them my best known methods so that they can build their careers.
Oh, yes, indeed. So we're going to just dive right into it. So you've had an incredible career journey from working at an Intel and becoming leadership expert, executive coach, and entrepreneur. What inspired your transition from corporate to consulting?
Well, I spent almost 30 years in the corporate world. Spent my first 10 years with a company called D. Laval. And that was, we did heavy equipment. I was a program manager or project manager for them. And I was a GM, general manager for one of their small divisions. And ultimately in the late 80s, I had the opportunity to move from heavy equipment into high tech. And I joined Intel's digital video organization in Princeton, New Jersey at the end of 1989, the beginning of 1989. And I was there for 18 years. And although I started on the technical side, I ultimately spent my last 10 years managing Intel's management leadership development for first and midline programs. And I felt very, very blessed that I had the chance to do that. We used to train 2,500 managers in 10 different countries each year. And when I retired from Intel in 2007 to start my entrepreneurial journey, we had just finished training our 40,000th manager. So I got pretty good at the leadership stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when making the leap from corporate America to entrepreneurship, and how did you overcome it?
Well, so I'm a strategic planner. I would say I'm a good strategic planner. I had a 10-year plan. And my 10-year plan at 40 was to retire at 50. And I was fortunate to be able to do that. I actually retired when I was 51. That extra year was just kind of a bonus because I was still having fun at the time. So I didn't leave my financial advisor talked me out of retiring early. And he said, I know we've been targeting 50. You can retire if you want, and my wife has a different definition of retirement than I do. Mine was to just kind of move out of the corporate world into being an entrepreneur, so I had full control of my calendar. But I had a 10-year plan, and my 10-year plan was to retire at 50. I was able to do that within a year. And I think the big difference, the big thing for me was, I had a fantastic mentor and coach, and she kept me on track, right? And we identified what was important, why I wanted to do that, to be able to kind of give back. And then we put the necessary things in place, and you need a bunch of stuff to move into kind of being your own entrepreneur. It's been 17 years. It'll be 18 years in June since we've been doing this. I left Intel, took 2 of my colleagues with me. We resigned on June 1st, and June 2nd we had of 2007 we had a company, and it's every year's been better than the last, and I would highly recommend it. But I would also not recommend it to people that don't like to do business development. That no matter what you're an expert in, if you don't do business development, you don't make the sales calls, you don't develop the relationships, and you don't spend most of your time there, I think it's difficult to be an entrepreneur. People think that you leave the corporation and on day one you're making whatever $5,000 or $10,000 a day. It doesn't quite work like that.
No, it doesn't. And it's so funny that you mentioned that, because when a lot of people see your success or your stepping stones of you becoming an entrepreneur, they like, oh my God, this looks so easy. I am getting ready to be so rich tomorrow, and I'm going to make all of this money, not knowing behind the scenes, like, it's a struggle. We have to really crawl before we actually walk peacefully.
Yeah. And actually, Yvette, I've come up with what I call the 7 Ps of being a successful entrepreneur. Glad to share those with you if you'd like.
Yes, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. So I think and these are in no particular order, although I think they could be in a particular order. The first P that I would say is you have to have provisions. And provisions, which means financial provisions as well as other support, that you really need to have cash available to cover you for 18 to 24 months, because it really takes that amount of time in order to get up and running at full speed. I remember when we left the corporate organization with myself and my 2 business partners, I remember having the 18th month call, right? Of like, oh, was this a mistake? Because we had gotten some work, but nothing that was sustainable for, a 3-person business. And I said, hey, have faith. Everything that people have told us is it's 18 to 24 months. And sure enough, at 19 months, 1 month later, we got this massive PO that we went and did developed a leadership program for a very, very large company in Silicon Valley. And that lasted us for several years. So that was the first thing. So you have to be able to invest the money. The second thing, you have to have kind of a unique product. That's the second P. Some kind of shtick of what's, how you're different than everybody else. One of the things I do when people call me, either my colleagues or friends of colleagues or people out of the blue off of LinkedIn will call me and say, hey, I want to come and work for you, and can you just hire me? And, I'll just work 1 day a month, and you can send me a nice check for $10,000, and I'll take the rest of the month off. So, well, it doesn't quite work like that. And I'll ask them, so if I was interviewing you, tell me what would you tell me of reasons to hire you? And I just let them talk. And it's all the same, I have this experience and this knowledge, and I'm passionate about this. And then at the end, after they're done speaking, I ask them one really critical question. And the critical question is what will the next person tell me that I'm going to interview that's any different than what you are? And usually the response is, well, probably something similar. So I think you have to, in marketing terms, I think you have to have what I would call your SCA, your sustainable competitive advantage. So what makes you different, more hireable than the next person? And I'll use me as an example. So people will say, why should I hire you as a coach? or why should we use your leadership programs? And I think the big difference is, particularly from a coach perspective, is, my background is in engineering and dual degree in engineering and business, and then did my MBA, and I have my, did all my doctoral work in leadership. So I can talk nerd, I can talk all the bits and bytes, right? I've lived that. I've managed, design teams, software and hardware teams. I've dealt with big companies like Apple and Microsoft and so forth, when I was at Intel. So I bring that in. And then, of course, I've done all of my research on leadership and certifications and coaching and so forth. So I bring the technical side and the human side together. And what I found is there's not a lot of coaches that provide that, or a lot of leadership professors or instructors that do that. So I think that's the second thing is that kind of makes me, it's the combination of those two elements that gives me my sustainable competitive advantage. So I would encourage people to think about that. What do you have? What are the combination? It might be one particular thing. Usually it's two or three, to think about that as they kind of think of themselves as a product. So that's the second piece. So provisions, product. Another thing is you need presence, social media presence. People need to find you, right? So you have to be able to get out there. People, when I do coaching of people that have come out of the corporate world and kind of want to do what I do, they're always asking, like, so why should I do the social media thing? It's just, how much work have you gotten from social media? And what I'll tell them is that, the algorithms, the search algorithms love being active and consistent, right? So whether it's posting on Facebook or X or LinkedIn or Pinterest or wherever your audience lives, is having that consistency. When people search for you, the search engines like that, right? And that's the advantage, as opposed to, if I, do 10,000 posts on LinkedIn, I'm going to get, 100 clients. It doesn't work quite that way. So that's the third thing: provisions, product, presence. The last one is people, building your network, right? One of the things that I've done is our primary audience is in LinkedIn. We do a lot of business, particularly with technical people. In fact, I wrote a book, and I think we're going to give the book away at the end of the session, right? I'm going to give you a link to the book, and then you're going to be able to offer it for anyone that lasts this long listening. So we'll give my book away, and the book is called Ready, Set, Get Hired. And it's really about, whether you're looking to get hired by clients, or looking to get hired by a corporation if you're transitioning jobs. It'll give you all of my scripts on 100% of them on how to do that, and we'll just give that away to you. So that's the fourth P on people. Last thing, the fifth one was publication. That you have to have. We were told when before we left the corporate world, I interviewed probably 10 really successful entrepreneurs, and I looked for themes. And one of the themes was, they said, you really have to have a book. You really need a hardcover book. If you're selling to CEOs or chief executive officers, presidents of companies, you need to be able to kind of demonstrate it, and you need a hardcover book. So as soon as we left the corporation, within the first year, we wrote our book, and it's called, as you mentioned, it's called The Leader of Oz. We took the story of the Wizard of Oz, and we wrote this business parable about the leader of Oz, about this company in Kansas that gets whisked away and dropped into Silicon Valley, and you have the wicked VP from the East and the wicked VP from the West. So we had a lot of fun with it. But the difference was because myself and my business partner, Dr. Ali Lakhani, we took all of our academic knowledge as the foundation, and it's really, how do you build a team in a very, very kind of fun and interesting way, but it's all foundationally grounded, as opposed to anecdotal, like, oh, here's an idea, use my idea. So that's the fifth item. Sixth item is the 6P is partner, right? It's, one of we did is we found other organizations to partner with, right? That we filled a gap for them, right? It wasn't partnering where we're going after the same customers, The difference is we're going after it with different products. So we partnered with an organization that had their specialty in influence and in critical influence and in negotiations. And they didn't have any leadership stuff. So they had built this customer base over 30 years, and the customers wanted to expand and they couldn't expand. So we, co-branded our material with them. We got certified on their products. They got certified on ours. And it was really a win-win. So we could bring their products into our clients, and then we could, fill the needs for their clients. So don't try to do it all on your own. Find other people. And the key is you want to find other people who are doing complementary work, right? Too often I find where people try to connect with other consultancies or coaches or other training organizations. And essentially what they're doing is they're just doing it, giving a different flavor of what that company already does. And they're not interested in that. They're interested in how do they expand their business. And you're going to really have to have a deep understanding of how you, the gap that you fill. And then the last thing I would say is that you need for your P's is presence, right? And having, persistency. You have to have a degree of persistence, because it's not going to come very, very quickly. And when I do a lot of coaching with people that are in transition, where they've been laid off or they've voluntarily left the organization, I'll give you a real good example that I have had recently. Is I've said to the one person, I said, this person was in education. They wanted to transition into another education position. They were looking. And after several months, they had contacted me and said, hey, I've been trying to do, job applications online, and, I'm just not getting any traction or even any callbacks. So what do I need to do differently? And I said, well, how much, what are you looking to make? Right. And he said, we'll use a round number just for ease, 120,000 a year. Okay. So let's call it 10,000 a month or 2,500 a week. Right. So what I want to know is, so tell me what you did last week, right, to try to get a job. And he would list all the things. And most of it was, just filling application after application online. And I said, okay, so if you had to pay someone to kind of do that work, knowing the results you're going to get, how much would you pay them? And he said, well, probably not a whole lot, maybe $250 for the week. So I said, well, you want to get hired for $2,500 a week, and you're doing $250 a week, and you're not getting any results. You either need to hire somebody that's going to be able to get you the results, or you need to change your approach. So what I had him do was I said, you need to get 5 lunch appointments with people that you're just going to sit down. You're going to tell them, he was actually working on his doctorate at the moment. You're going to share with all the research that you've done for them, to just say, so you're not going to ask for a job. You're just going to go out and share the information just to help make their organizations better. So he contacted principals and superintendents and so forth. And within a week, he got 5 lunches, right? And he went out and had lunches. And at the end of the week, he called me and he said, hey, I went out and did that. And we'll see what happens. Monday morning, he gets a call from one of the superintendents and says, hey, I don't have a job for you. What I'm interested in is you've done a lot of really interesting research, and we have a $30,000 grant, and we haven't really found somebody to do this. Would you be interested in doing it? So Monday morning, he gets a $30,000 grant. Now, that's not his 120 target. The difference was it got him into the system, to ultimately to be able to be known, and landed the position. So you have to be able to do those kind of things. And you also have to be able to invest in yourself, right? That's the other thing, is that, it takes a long time, so if you're, let's say, out 2 years, right, and you were making $10,000 a month, that's $240,000 that you haven't made, right? That's investing in yourself and you as the product. And you have to be willing, to be able to say, anything I make in this period of time is really going to be a windfall. And if you're not willing to invest that, most of the people that I talk to say, oh, I probably got enough money to last 4 or 5 months, and then I'm shot. It's like, go look for a job. Do not start an entrepreneurial journey, because the odds of you getting to where you need to be sustainable in that period of time is really, really slim. So
Yeah.
done a lot of talking here.
No,
What
you're
questions
good.
do you have?
Yeah, you're good. I wanted to ask, like, from you transitioning from corporate to you becoming an entrepreneur yourself, how was it possible for you to find a good fit to go in partnership with two other individuals and, you know, putting so much trust in it to a point where you felt comfortable and you guys were able to work together as one?
Great question. We had met. So my last year at Intel, there was a lot of organizational changes, and the direction that the new VP wanted to that he wanted to move the organization into was not aligned with what I had seen to be successful. And even though we drastically tried to influence his decision, ultimately, because of his position of power, he said, no, we're not going to do that. This leadership stuff, we're not going to invest in that anymore. And we got a lot of smart people. Because we had seen the transition coming, the three of us met. Everybody flew to Phoenix, where I was based. We put a business plan together. We talked about how we can make it work, what were our fallback positions, and we really created a really good business plan. And we said, hey, let's pick a date. If we can't get the VP to change his mind to kind of continue to move, if he does, great, we'll stay. And if not, we'll look for, my financial guy always says, there'll be that message from God, right? And that was certainly the message from God of like, hey, we're not going to do all the stuff that works anymore. What I had said was, let's put the plan together, let's pick a date, and if it doesn't happen, which was June 1st, we'll make that transition. Now, the one thing I will say is that what we all did was we recognized that we're going to have enough funds in order to finance our fixed and variable costs, right? So you have mortgages and insurance, and food was a good idea to have, to be able to buy food for the families and so forth. So we had an idea of what the outlay was going to be, and we fortunately we all had done enough savings that we could be able to tap into that for up to 2 years, right? So we were in really good position for that. So I'd say you want to make sure that you have a really good nest egg there. And then we pulled the plug. And one of the other things, as you had mentioned, I've been a professor at 5 different universities. I'm still teaching. I'm only teaching at 1 at the moment. 5 was just a little bit too crazy. And one of the things that I could do is I could up my classes during the transition time. So even though I was focused during the day, I was teaching, a couple evening classes throughout the transition. And that really helped kind of the cash flow, where you're having, several $100s, not thousands of dollars coming in a week, but several $100s a week coming in from that. So having that kind of as a fallback, not to go doing that full time, but having that so you didn't really have to worry like, oh, we're going to be short for mortgage this month, was a positive.
Okay. So, as an entrepreneur for over 15 years, what are your biggest lessons you've learned about running a business?
I think the biggest lesson, and I can't talk strongly enough about this, is that I think every entrepreneur has a certain passion, for what the product that they provide. And what you want to do is you want to work on development of the product. And it's really an 80-20 thing, that you have to spend 20% of your time initially on the product and 80% of the time doing business development. And business development means speaking, running seminars, getting on the phone. We use what we call the 10% rule. We always had 10 good potential clients in the pipeline, with the anticipation that if you work them long enough, like our 19-month client, right? If you work them long enough, that they will come in, and that you'll get 1 out of the 10. And we were fortunate, that our hit ratio was closer to 30% rather than the 10%. But the key is I think, from my other colleagues who have been entrepreneurs as well, is a lot of times when they land that big client, it's like, oh, great, okay, so I don't have to do any more development. It's like, no, you want to be able to have something in the pipeline. With the first client we did, lasted almost 3 years, and then they brought in a new management. New management came in and said, oh, we're not going to do any of that stuff that you're doing with Magna Leadership Solutions. We're going to bring in our own people. And, everything went from, hundreds of thousands to zero, like instantaneously. And the good news was we had other people in the pipeline, and some had already come in, some more were coming in. So keeping the pipeline filled and not getting kind of too fat, dumb, and happy is, I think, really important.
Oh, that is great. So you focus on different development, positive intelligence, and leaders. Can you explain what positive intelligence is and how it impacts leadership effectiveness?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to explain positive intelligence is, I think most people are familiar with emotional intelligence, EQ. That was a term that was coined in the early 90s by Daniel Goleman at Rutgers University. He came up with this idea of, we all have this emotional intelligence. Everyone has a degree of IQ, intellectual intelligence. And what he said is, there's other people have this emotional intelligence, how they control themselves and how they interact with others at a very high level. And that was really part of my doctoral work that I had done around motivation and engagement and understanding emotional intelligence. And I think what I found was the emotional intelligence is a much more descripted methodology, meaning that you can read it, makes a lot of sense. Having your kind of roadmap of how do I apply it and get better takes a little bit of work, to say the least. And several years ago, a gentleman by the name of Shirzad Chamine wrote a book called Positive Intelligence. And what he did is he took the work of Goleman, of Gartner, of Richard Boyatzis, of Daniel Rock, lots and lots of different people that are very academic, and he put them all together and created an operating system, or something actually runs on your phone. It's an app that is much more prescriptive of what you need to do to build your emotional fitness, right? So your mental fitness. And I had done the program about 4 or 5 years ago and got certified to do that. And I've been running what they call pods of people to do that as well. So it's really about understanding at a very high level. Shirzad says you have your sage brain and you have your saboteur brain. And there are really 10 different saboteurs that you have. And once you understand the things that are keeping you back and how to turn on your sage brain with the 5, what he calls the 5 sage powers, and really building yourself as a leader, because the best leaders really, their very first step is kind of know thyself, right? Kind of my strengths, my weaknesses, what's keeping me back, what's moving me forward. So I would say that's the best way. And if people want a kind of a quick start guide and be able to access the assessments, and by the way, the assessments are free, and they'll tell you what your strengths of your saboteurs are. If they go to pqtrainingandcoaching.com, you'll get a quick start list, and you'll be able to take the assessments. You can take the 2 assessments in probably less than about 10 minutes or so.
Okay. So how can professionals train their mindset to be more resilient, especially in high pressure environments? when they're not used to it?
Well, the first thing they need to do is they need to recognize that they need to get better. And I would say the biggest challenge I have with executives is they're always too busy to do the investment, right? And
Yes.
that's like, I don't have time, so just give me the 2-minute thing that I need to do, and I'll move forward. And that's okay. The thing is, it's very short-term focused. So when we do our coaching programs with executives, the very first thing we do is we put them through the positive. There's a 7-week program that we put them through as part of the coaching, so that they can get a deeper understanding of what's holding them back and so forth. And I think the biggest challenge with emotional intelligence or positive intelligence or positive psychology, like Martin Seligman did at University of Pennsylvania, the big challenge is that it's correlational and not causational. And let me explain that, right? That if you're going to invest in yourself, you're not going to see a cause and effect relationship, right? That if I put 2 hours here, I'm going to be able to get through my projects 2 hours quicker, or I'm going to have 2 hours less of hassle with my staff or whatever. That's causation, right? That's you want, it's an if-then kind of thing. And what we really need to do is, once managers or leaders need to recognize they have to build themselves, what we want them to do is start investing. And what Shirzad Chamine talks about in positive intelligence, building those neural pathways, so that you can, the brain is plastic, so it can mold, right? The thing is it doesn't happen instantly. Like, you don't do 2 hours and voila, it's built, right?
Yes.
You have to do it over time. You have to do it consistently. The consistency thing is the most important. And that's what the program does, is it really does it through lots and lots of 2-minute kind of activities. You don't have to be a guru and go off to some Buddhist temple and sit for 7 days and hum. And it's nothing like that. It's really training your brain to be able to build that pathway. So when you need it in the future, it's there, right? And you may not even recognize that. And one of the things that we do know is to build that, there's lots of information, incorrect information on the internet, that, you can build a habit in 21 days. It's more like about 62 days to do that. And if you build that consistency in when you need it to be able to kind of emotionally react to the other person, or emotionally react to something that you're feeling, once you have that neural pathway available, you can kind of get off your current your off ramp and get onto the new highway.
Yes. And it's so important to have that, to take those different tests and everything to figure out the stage of where your brain is. Because sometimes people may think their brain is already ready and set for the entrepreneurship or for the growth or for the positive intelligence and everything, but you really don't know until you actually answer and those certain questions that they give you that are super challenging, that you never really thought that you will have to work your brain so much, and that you're not really mentally ready for that stage of your life, but yet it gives you the tools and everything for preparation to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think one of the things that I would encourage the listeners to be sure of is you want to make sure that you're taking, we don't call them tests, right? Because tests usually indicate there's a right and a wrong.
You're right.
We call them assessments, right? So it's really
Yeah.
assessing kind of your strengths and weaknesses in different areas. And one of the things I will tell you is there's lots and lots of assessments out there. You want to make sure that the assessments that you have are statistically validated. That's one of the things that's been really important to me, pretty much as an academic as well, is I want to make sure that if I answer this question, it truly does represent this type of result. So the one thing I'll tell you is the PQ, positive intelligence assessment, is statistically validated, right? So, and they've, I think, done over, I think it's right about 2 million people through it at the moment. So as long as you have a big enough sample size and you've done a good statistical analysis, answering the different questions and getting the result, you have a high degree of confidence that indeed how you answered it really does mean this other thing.
Yes. So, how important is it as far as like personal branding for leaders, and what are the first steps to build a strong personal brand?
Well, I think the first part is, it's, we have a model that we use in our leadership program called the ADAM model that we ADAM that we developed. And the first thing we say is, for all of the things, whether it's developing your own brand or solving a problem, you want to do the first day is analysis, right? So analyze where you are. You can use assessments, you can do surveys, you can talk to people, depending on what you're trying to analyze. Getting a foundation, a baseline is important, right? And then once you have that analysis completed, then you want to do a design. So how are we going to approach that, right? And then once you have a design, here's the elements I'm going to do. Might be getting a coach, might be getting additional training, might be changing experience, might be changing jobs. There's lots and lots of different ways to learn out there. Once you move through the second one, which is design, you move to the third A, which is apply. You need to go out and start testing this, right? And you don't wait too long, right? So I would encourage people to do this quickly, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of people spend, years in the analysis and years in the design, and then voila, they've got it. It's 100% perfect for them. They go out and try it, and the first thing they do is like, oh, that doesn't work, or I hate this kind of thing, And what you want to do is we used to call it at Intel rapid prototyping, right? You do a quick analysis, has to be thorough enough. You do a reasonable design, 80-20, get it, you spend 20% of your time to get 80% there. Don't worry about that other 20%. And then you start applying it and recognizing, experience would have been better, or courses would have been better, or having a mentor would have been better, right? So you don't know what you don't know. And then the last thing is in the ADAM model, you have analyze, design, apply, and then measure, right? You have to have some metric system in there, some feedback system that you can rely on, so you can see, hey, am I getting better, or am I not, right? And if you've done the good analysis up front, then this is what's called a reinforcing cycle. As you measure, what you do is once you measure it, it gives you more information. Then quite often you will have people go in and take the assessments again and see, hey, is this making any difference? If it is, let's keep doing what it's doing. And if it isn't, maybe we tweak the design a little more, or we apply differently. So the key is it's so important to have a good system. And one of the things I found, Yvette, is most people aren't disciplined, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to offend people. And I'm going to put myself in that category as well. And that's the reason that you really need somebody to be a buddy or coach or mentor for you. One, not only to guide you, but hold you accountable, right? That there's too many distractions in this world, right? One of them is the phone, right? Voila, I just read an article on that. I think it's every 16 seconds on average, we're distracted from the phone, whether it's buzzing, something pops up, or whatever. And you really can't get into deep work. If you read the book by Cal Newport on deep work, you really can't get deep when you're doing everything in 16 second slices. You just can't do that. So the positive intelligence really helps build that neural pathway. So you move from that 16-second highway into the several minute or half hour type of highway. So it's so important to do that. Being disciplined about doing it, because it's correlational, because you're doing all this work and you're not seeing the immediate response. Most people give up early, and that's where a mentor or coach can be helpful for you.
Yes, it can be extremely helpful. And it's so crazy. You brought up the phone. So I have my phone set to a point I won't be on it so much. And because next thing you know, you're scrolling and you could be on there for hours and not even know it, because time flies by so fast. So I've been disciplining myself from the beginning of the year that I'm only on my phone only probably 2 hours, 2 3 hours throughout the
Mhm.
day, unless it's like a phone call or something like that. And I really just utilize my time and listen to different educational podcast, or I watch something instead of watching it on YouTube on my phone, I watch it on my TV.
Yeah.
So I could really just, just educate myself more. And I also make sure that I read or listen to so many books
Mhm.
throughout the month so that I could prioritize my mindset differently, because the distraction that you can receive by being on your phone, it takes away so many parts of your brain, not even knowing that it's just such a distraction like that. And also just working on your health and just making sure everything is all right inside of your home, because what I've learned is when you're running a business and trying to prioritize life itself, your
Mhm.
health can even deter, even in the midst of that, when you're not taking care of yourself. So even it's great to go ride a bike, great to take a walk or jog somewhere or do something of nature, because if time will go by so fast and you're unhealthy and you won't even be able to reap the benefits of your hard work of so many years.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my people I'm coaching at the moment, we had this discussion yesterday. She's up in Canada, and um, she gets distracted easily. Let me put it that way. So what we had her do was, and she's got a lot. She works in the mortgage world, so there's lots of critical timing type of thing. So she always believes she has to be on kind of 24/7, and it's just not contributing to good health for her. So what we did was we set up some rules. Like between 8 and 9 every morning you'll be available, and then 9 to 1 or whatever the time was that you're going to be doing some deep work, right? And then at 1 to 2, you'll be able to come back on. And I said, what you want to do is we're going to set that up so as people are sending you emails, you're going to say, hey, I'm currently working, or whatever you want to position it as. And you turn the laptop computer off or the email system off, right? And it says, hey, if this is urgent, text me, right?
Yes.
And if not, I'll be available at 1 o'clock to address the issue. We'll see what happens. I've done this with a couple other execs, and what they found is that pretty much no one contacts them during the time. Maybe once a week at best, right? The people are respectful of that. So and what is it? A crisis for you is not a it's not urgent for, or it's
Urgent
not.
for you.
A, so
Yeah.
I think there's lots of things that you can do. My daughter, who's a engineer, and she actually works at Intel as well. She recommended a book called uh, what is it? The Phone Detox, something like that, or Breaking Up with Your Phone. Breaking Up with Your
Okay.
Phone. I haven't read it. She did it and worked really well for her. But the thing is,
Yeah.
structure your day in such a way that you have that deep time and you're not distracted.
Yes, because um, when you have so many of those distractions, I'm telling you, you will get absolutely nothing done, and you'll be like, "Wait a minute, where did time go?" So, like, discipline is like so important. It creates boundaries for yourself too, because I live by a schedule. So anybody be like, are you free to do this? And then no, I can't do that. That's my me time hours. I'm going to be doing some personal stuff going, and or I just make sure that my time is prioritized. And if it's not on the calendar, I'm not doing it. I'm
Hmm.
not. And everyone knows that. Even when it comes to people contacting me, I only let certain people contact me on a personal level, or when on a business level, I'd be like, oh, you have to email me and my assistant will get back with you. things like that, because people will really brutally disrupt your time and make it about themselves. And if you don't create those boundaries and create a system for your life, it will be chaotic.
Yeah. And I think it sounds like you're already doing one of the recommendations that I have for the execs I work with is time blocking, right? That you're going to
Yeah.
block time out. I give access to my calendar to all my clients, right? Like this is my calendar, right? And it'll tell you what the open times are, and if you need any open times, those open times are yours. But I make sure that I have other times blocked out so that I can
Yes.
the deep work done, right? That if you don't do that magically at the end of the week, like, like I don't have any time, it's all gone, right? And I think all of us are overextend ourselves, right? There's some good studies that have shown that typically, I think in the U.S. at least, the average time is about a 2.5. So times whatever you think, like, oh, I'm going to go work on this project and develop this. That should only take me an hour. It's usually about 2.5 hours, right? Or that's only going to take me a week. It's about 2.5 weeks, right? So I always
Yeah.
tell people, in fact, I wrote an article, if anybody searches for it, it's on the internet, on Medium, on the difference between being proactive and reactive.
Ooh, I'm about to look at that.
You're right. So the important, and being kind of optimistic and pessimistic, right? So there's optimistic, pessimistic, and realistic, right? That you have to be able to do that. And I think most of us are optimists that we can always get more done. The biggest thing that we found when you do the analysis is that most people don't. We used to call it at Intel KTBR, keep the business running.
Keep the
Most
business
people
running.
don't pay any attention to the amount of time it takes just to do regular kind of stuff, right? Like I have to read my email and I have to respond and I have to do billing and I have to do some postings or whatever. So if you look at all the time that you spend, you really need to spend, right? That there's a lot less time to do that project work than you would think. And the tendency, not only as an entrepreneur, but also when I was back in corporate, is managers would load you down with additional project work, and most people didn't have an idea like what does it take to do a regular job. So I had all my staff map what they did for 1 or 2 weeks out to see where all their time was going. And when I would give them a project to work on, which might be 10 or 20 hours a week, what they find out is like, well, I've mapped it out and I've got like 90 minutes a day available. So I can't take a 10-hour week. But until they do that, you really don't know what your capacity is, and you have to know it. So as a leader, you never say, I can't do something. What you say is, let's look at what has to get done, and you and I will figure out a way to get it done. But it may not be me doing the work, right? And I think that's a mark of a good leader, as opposed to someone that's a manager that just says, hey, I'm busy. I don't have extra time. You go figure it out.
Yeah, a solution is always needed. For sure. So, if you could give one piece of advice to inspiring leaders who want to make a real impact, what would it be?
I think it's a two-part piece of advice. I think the first thing is figure out what you love to do, what you have passion for, not necessarily what you're skilled to do. Like, figure out what that is, right? And then second is get a partner, whether it's someone within your organization, it's a friend, or someone that's really going to hold you accountable and help guide you, whether it's a coach or a mentor, right? Get them and partner with them to be able to make it happen. So the thing is don't just go after stuff that you're good at. Go after stuff that you're passionate about, because stuff that you're good at, maintaining that degree of self-discipline for staying focused is very difficult, right? If you're passionate about something, you don't need a whole lot of prodding to continue work on it. So figure out what you're passionate about. And certainly if you're using this as a finance, to finance your life, you want to make sure what you're passionate about, that you can have a diversion into areas that you can at least not starve to death trying to make that happen.
Wow. So, can you share a memorable success story from your coaching or leadership experience that highlights the power of great leadership?
Let's think about this for a second. Yeah, so I think one of the success stories I'll tell you is the first when I was in the corporate world, every time I got a new manager, I tell them the same thing. How you are defined as a leader will happen in the moments of things when they're chaotic and catastrophic. That will define you as a leader. And it's not so much the result that you get, but how you handle it and handle it with the people that are involved, right? That'll define you as a leader more so than just the output. And what I'll tell you is I had one manager call me about a year and a half ago, hadn't talked to him in 10 years. And he called me. He's now this senior VP at a big technology company. I hadn't talked to him in 10 years. And out of the blue, I got a request to have a Zoom call with him. I said, okay, Jeff, just book it on the calendar. And he said, I want to let you know that you said something to me in that cafeteria the first time I met you that has completely accelerated my whole career. And it was exactly what I just told you about how you handle things, how you build yourself so you can handle it in a very positive, forward-looking way that really defined him as a leader. And he says that has skyrocketed my career. He says, you probably don't even remember it. And he said, I just wanted to call you and let you know that every day, I think about as I'm making decisions, what Kevin told me in the cafeteria. And to me, that's, more, the best leaders really build other leaders. And that's a good testament to kind of where I was focused. It was much more about him than it was about me.
That's inspiring. It really is. That's great, Dr. Kevin. Wow. So where can our listeners connect with you, and how can they learn more about the Magna Leadership Solutions and your book, The Leader of Oz?
Yeah. So the first thing is you can send me an email. If you send me an email, Kevin, Kevin at magnaleadership.com, I'll be glad to correspond with you. If you want to set up a meeting in my signature line, you'll see my calendar. Any open time will be yours. And the thing that I'll promise everyone here, Yvette, is that I don't do sales pitches, that I'm much more of a helper type. I've been really fortunate enough to only have to do work that I enjoy. I don't do it for financial gain in particular. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And if they want to just search, you can go to our business site, which is magnaleadership.com. Talks about all our different leadership programs. If you're interested in talking about coaching or mentoring, they can connect with me at coachsultants.com. So I'm a coach sultant. So one word, coachsultants.com. And if you want to learn about PQ, positive intelligence, they can go to my positive intelligence site, which is PQ trainingandcoaching.com. So any of those ways to get a hold of me, but send me an email. I promise I'll respond. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm listed as Dr. Kevin Gazzara. Feel free. I'll be glad to accept that invitation.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kevin. I really enjoyed this conversation. You have enlightened me just off the conversation, and I really appreciate you for being on my podcast show.
And one more thing, right? I promised I'm going to give away my book.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Let's give it away.
Yes.
So if any listener goes here, and you can probably put it in the show notes as well, but if you're listening, if you go to magnaleader.co, not com, magnaleader.co / and then in all caps, gift, GIFT, it'll give you a link to the electronic copy of Ready, Set, Get Hired. And I'm hoping whether you're an entrepreneur or you're looking to move jobs or find a new job, my hope is that you'll enjoy the book and it'll be of value to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. You guys better get that book.
Sure.
Yes. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Life Heard Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and also listen to Life Heard Podcast on all major platforms and audio. Thank you. Have a blessed day.
Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9-to-5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.